Welcome to Illustration and Media Digital Applications. This is Module 3, Unit 3.2, the Paint Bucket. Today, we will be painting SketchUp surfaces. We'll be learning how to work with components. I'm Sherry McKinley. Let's get started.
Selecting the Paint Bucket tool will open the Materials browser. This allows you to pick and edit materials that you can paint into your scene. Simply pick a material and click on surfaces in your scene to paint them. You can also select multiple surfaces to paint them all at once. The Materials browser itself is different for Windows and Mac users, so let's take a quick moment to examine the basics of each. On Windows, the browser has two main tabs to select and edit materials. Using the Select tab, you can scroll through various material libraries that come with SketchUp. Choose a library, then click on the material you'd like to paint, and paint it into your scene. You can examine all the materials that are in your scene by clicking on the house icon. Select one of the materials in the scene, and then click on the Edit tab. Here, you can change the color of the material, the opacity, texture image, and other settings as well. Notice that as you make changes to a material, these changes are seen in real time in your model. On a Mac, you have several tabs giving you different ways to pick colors to paint into your model. Select the brick icon to get access to the different material libraries. Cycle through the libraries to pick materials and paint them into your scene. To see what materials are currently in your scene, click on the house icon. To edit a material, double-click on it. This expands the browser and lets you edit the material, including the opacity, with this slider. To change the color, choose one of the color tabs and make the adjustment there. We'll cover these material browsers in more depth in other videos. For now, let's look at a few options when you're painting material into your scene. You can use modifier keys to speed up the painting process as you explore different material options. There are a number of faces painted with the same material, but they are separated around the model. Holding the Shift key down while painting a new material will replace all of the previous material, regardless of where it is in the scene. Now let's try the same exercise, but this time hold the Control key or Option key on a Mac. This results in replacing the material that is touching in the model. Because these surfaces were not touching the previous material, they were not painted. Let's reset the scene and try once again. Notice that although not all of this material is touching, it is all part of geometry that is joined together. This time, hold both the Shift key and Control key together, or Shift and Option key on a Mac. This will paint all similar material on geometry that is joined. So to review, holding the Shift key while painting will replace that material everywhere in the scene, regardless of material or geometry adjacency. Holding the Control key or Option key on a Mac relies on material adjacency, and holding the Shift and Control or Option key together relies on geometry adjacency. The final modifier key is the Alt key or Apple key on a Mac. Press this key to sample existing material.
Today we're going to be working with the paint bucket, and it's quite easy to do. So to give this command a try, we're going to start out with our typical 20-foot by 20-foot square on our screen, and I am going to ask you to push-pull it 10 feet up into the air, and we'll use those surfaces to paint and practice our paint bucket command. Now, just a reminder that I am using the Windows version of SketchUp, which still seems to be the most common, and I am going to be posting additional videos on the paint bucket for the Mac users so that you can see just where the differences are exactly, and you can watch those videos for this unit. Now you will see an icon at the top of your screen. It looks exactly like what it promises to be, and that is our paint bucket. So we're going to click on that, and that will bring us to a window. Now, just as the previous video has showed us, we do have two tabs here. I'm going to get everyone to go to where it says Materials. For the Mac users, you'll be clicking on what looks like a red brick to access that. And we can see that SketchUp has a lot of pre-set materials inside the program. Why don't we start with brick? And we can see the bricks that are there, and we'll just choose one of the materials. Pick on it, you'll see that it appears as an image at the top of that window for us, and then we can just drag that window over to the left and simply go to our surfaces in our model and click and click and literally just begin to paint surfaces. We can also hold down the Shift key and continue to repaint. Now, if I want to paint something again, or I'm not quite happy with that, I simply need to select a new surface and repaint it. It's as easy as that. Let's see what it looks like close up. It's not too bad. It is a JPEG file. Now later on, we're going to be learning how to add effects to these materials to make them look photorealistic with the plugins that we added on the first unit of this class. So I want you to experiment a little bit with that, with the colors, and simply go through and browse through all of the various types of existing colors and materials in SketchUp. Okay, next what I would like everyone to do is to select all that fun you had on your screen by windowing around it, and we're going to simply clear our screen by cutting or deleting what's on our screen, and we're going to begin again. Now, what I would like for you to do is to draw a rectangle this time that's 5 feet by 5 feet, and I'd like for us to push-pull it only 3 inches up. Now what this is going to end up being is a custom image where we're loading a material from outside of our drawing that could be a JPEG of a piece of art that we've saved onto our computer. It could be an area carpet that we've downloaded that we want to specify or use in an interior space, and we are able to do that in SketchUp as well. So I'm starting out by, I'm going to make this into a piece of artwork and show you how to do that. We are going to click on our paint bucket. Notice a spot here. I'm just going to circle around it. It has a little plus sign in it. This is where we begin to create a new material. So we're going to click there, and then we're going to go to the section that says use a texture image. So this is where I'm going to find an image on my computer that I can use as a piece of artwork in my drawing. So you're going to do the same thing. Find something that you have saved. Let's say this is going to be my art. I just saw some flowers there. Let's see here. All right, I think this should work. All right, once you find an image, it would be a JPEG file that you can use. You're going to click on it and then select Open, and you'll notice that it's very easy to get a custom material into our SketchUp model, and it just adds itself to our material library. Now I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it Custom Print. You can give it any name that you would like. And I'm simply going to say okay, but before I actually click there, I want you to just notice that we are sort of in the edit location of the paint bucket right now. So it does have a scale factor that's width, and for the height of this object, which is how it's scaled currently, I'm going to let that be what it is. I don't know. I'm assuming I'm going to get about 20 of those, but I'm going to do this by trial and error. So I'm going to say okay to that, and I'm going to go ahead and paint the surface, and that is correct. I got several of them. So once I see the scale factor of that versus the surface that I have in my model, I can then click on the Edit tab. Now I'm going to say, you know what, let's make this, I've got 5 across, let's make this, instead of 1 foot, let's make this 5 feet. And I'm getting it a little bit cut off, so I'm going to try 3 feet until I see one whole repeat of that JPEG. That will work. We're going to leave it there because I can see it. It's large enough. It's not too large, and I'll show you what to do next. So once that's complete, we're going to go ahead and close out our paint bucket window. Now what I typically do to make this perfect is I go ahead and use my push-pull command to push-pull around what would be the end of the repeat. So I'm going to orbit, push-pull it in. I'm actually push-pulling my way into artistic accuracy here. So now I'm going to push-pull this side. Notice I'm choosing the side, not the top, but the side, and I'm going all the way to there. Now I have my art exactly as I want for it to be, and I can actually rescale it according to whatever I need it to be once I bring it into my room. Now earlier, when we brought in objects from the Get Models location, I mentioned that these objects were components. Now what a component does, as I mentioned before, is it protects the item, joins everything together. In AutoCAD that would be called a block. In SketchUp it's called a component. And it basically protects it, puts everything together, and it also makes it so that the surfaces of our object don't attach to other surfaces in our model. So we do want to make things components before we bring them into an interior. That ensures that I can place my artwork on the wall and the artwork won't attach itself to the wall, which is terrible. Because if you don't make things into a component, later when you try to move the artwork, it'll be attached, it'll pull the wall with it, and so you kind of have to protect the pieces that you put into your model. I say this to everybody that I teach this part to. It's like when you buy something, you bring it in a box. You don't carry it in bit by bit, bolt by bolt, but you make sure that whenever you bring furniture into a home that you bring it in a box. So that's what a component basically is like doing. Now we're going to make a component of this object now so that it's protected the very same way that things were when we brought them in from Get Models. Now step 1 to do this is to go to our select tool and select around all of our surfaces and edges until everything becomes selected or blue. Now to make a component, we want to go to the Edit menu, and there is an option there that says Make Component. It's very simple to do. It basically protects it. So we're going to go Make Component, and I'm just going to call it Art. If I wanted, I could give it a full description. It could be a specification, but we're going to be a little bit lazy. I'm a little bit lazy with my components, and I'm just going to call it Art 1, let's say, and Create. Now notice how I have replace selection with component. That means that as soon as I click on create, it's going to become a component. I don't have to later then insert it. So let's click on create, and you'll notice now that everything, when I pick it, I'm going to click on the green outside, click on the object itself, it's joined everything together into a block or a component. So now it can be easily moved. So now when I want to go move that, rotate it, scale it, do whatever I want to it, I simply have to pick it once, don't have to window select it, but pick it, and I can simply then just move or scale, etc. Now at this stage, if I did want to scale my artwork to be larger, it would be really easy to do, and I wouldn't get that extra repeat of the custom material. So I would go to the Scale menu, click on Scale under Tools, or as we know the shortcut, image or icon or menu right there. I'm going to go Scale, and now if I wanted to scale it, I could make the artwork be the size that I needed it to be. Now it is important to note, now that I've made this into a component, you'll notice that I'm not able to simply repaint it the way that I used to paint surfaces, and that's because it's sitting inside of a box, the component that we turned it into. Now, because it's a component, I can get into the box in two different ways, and I can repaint it, but I do have to get inside of that box before I do that. Otherwise, I'm not going to really be doing anything to it. Two ways to do this. The first way is to click on it once, and then right-click on it, and simply go Edit Component. You'll notice when I click on Edit Component, I seem to be inside of where the box is, and I see this dashed gray line. Everything else in my model will turn gray in order for me then to go ahead and repaint it as I just did right there. So it really involves getting inside of that box. I just undid that. When you're done with that repainting, you can double click on the green space outside of that, and then you're back to normal. Now the other way to get inside of that component is simply to double click on it. And when I double click on it, it's basically saying edit the component. It's the same way to do that command. Now note that when I take a model from the Get Models location, sometimes I have to double click several times on the component in order to isolate the surface to repaint that surface. Continue to double click until you're able to successfully repaint the surface. If you're not able to in the beginning, then it usually just means you have to continue to double click until I'm to that surface. And the reason for that really is that some people, myself included, will make a component of something. Let's say it's a kitchen cabinet door, and then I will make the cabinet, base, and I will make that into a component. Then I will put the door onto the cabinet and make those two items into component. And basically you end up with component on component on component. So however many components are there, that is the number of times that you will have to double click on that object in order to repaint it. So we can see that that is the way now that we can edit that object. We can now rotate it, and I'm just gonna make it rotated to be vertical since it's lying on the floor. So I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees and it's facing upward, and I can basically now use that piece of art and move that into my space. Now finally, what we want to look at today is how to just edit the materials that are in SketchUp. So let's start by just drawing a 5 foot by 5 foot surface or plane. Zoom a window around it. And let's go to the paint bucket command and let's choose one of the materials. Why don't we try wood that's already in SketchUp? Now what we can do is we do have to first find a material that we like. Perhaps I like the wood, the grain of the wood, maybe somehow the tone of the wood, and I'm going to choose that material and paint my surface. Now after I've painted it, I can then click on the edit button, the edit tab, and change the value. I do this all the time to sort of customize materials, and I can turn what was a lighter wood into a much darker wood. I can make it darker. I can change the scale of it. Let's say make it 3 feet or 2 feet or even 10 feet. Look at how large that is, and I can do that to it. I can also make it transparent by changing the opacity, so any material, in other words, can become like a glass where I'm seeing through it. Okay, so it's important to note that I can choose a material, paint a surface, and then edit that material to be customized to whatever I like, including the color. I wouldn't play too much with the color because it makes it a little bit odd in SketchUp, but it's certainly something that you can consider. Now when that's complete, and I have that in my model, maybe that's the flooring material that I've chosen, and I've decided to make it a 3 foot scale, and that's going to be my wood color. When I want to go repaint something else with that color, and I'm not sure, exactly how much I edited that material, I can use what's called sample paint. And you'll see that that's located there under the Select tab. I can choose sample paint, click on the material that I want to pull back up again, and you'll see that it actually reappears in my window there. So I can choose to paint anything with that exact same material. Let's try it over here. Click on that sample paint, and now I can repaint that material with that. Works perfectly, saves a lot of time.